This is G-Free Radio. Here's your host, Peter Stewart.
In this week's programme, I'll introduce you to Shirley Plant. And Shirley is a little bit greedy. She doesn't have just one food allergy, but several. There's wheat, gluten, dairy, eggs, corn and sugar, to name just a few. So she's got to be oh so careful with what she eats. And that's the reason that she's become one of the most knowledgeable people in all of Canada on celiac disease. On the line from Ottawa, the author of Finally Food I Can Eat tells me about coping as a celiac in Canada, the availability of food, and her fears for the future with regard to the diagnosis of diabetes. Our series on GF World Foods continues with Ria and Kirin from Punjaban Curry. Hear about their range of delicious, authentic sauces and the great story of how they were developed. New numbers out this week on the growth of the gluten-free market. They show a huge rise, the exact figures later on in the show. But there are also warnings for those in the G-free food business. Those who are buying non-wheat products may not always do so. We number crunch later and explain more. Your child needs support. Yes, the one with celiac disease, but also the kids who don't have it. Changes that affect them when they don't need to can cause resentment or even jealousy with their brother or sister. We've got some top tips for dealing with those other siblings. And we take a look at short grain rice types, sticky, sushi and Bhutanese red, all in this week's G-Free Radio Show. So let's take a look at some of those numbers first of all. Oh, hello, by the way. Hope you've had a good week. This is Peter Stewart on G-Free Radio. 18 stores in Massachusetts owned by Roche Brothers, that's their supermarket brand, and this past autumn/fall, every one of those supermarkets was revamped with dedicated gluten-free sections, stocked with hundreds of new items, and the press release from that company says those expanded selections have grown gluten-free sales by double-digit percentages. They say growing awareness, product availability and improved quality means more people are cutting gluten out of their diet, even if they haven't been diagnosed with gluten intolerance. And they go on to say that the NPD Group, that's a company of market researchers, estimates that almost 28% of consumers seek out gluten-free foods. Nationally, they say gluten-free food and beverage sales are projected to exceed $6.6 billion by 2017. Let's just rewind a sentence. The NPD Group of market researchers estimates that almost 28% of consumers seek out gluten-free foods. Really? Really? I'm stunned by that. Does that make sense to you? You know, as a journalist, we're often advised when it comes to dealing with statistics that you don't have to be a mathematician or know an awful lot about statistics. But sometimes when a statistic is thrown at you, think to yourself, does that actually make sense? Does that kind of feel wrong? Just stop for a moment and step back. And I read that statistic to you again. 28% of consumers that go into supermarkets seek out, not just buy, but seek out gluten-free food. 28%. I don't think that's right, do you? I really don't think that's right. I would be more than surprised if more than a quarter of people in my local supermarket or store look for gluten-free food. How many do you reckon? 5%? 10 at a push. Not 20. That just doesn't feel right to me. But let's look at a few other numbers, and then we'll go to another report out this week, which looks at things from a slightly different perspective. Okay, the number of households buying gluten-free products has more than doubled since 2010. Okay, this according to Jezebel.com. Interesting name. Sales for gluten-free companies like Udi's and Glutino up by 50% last year. Only 1.8 million Americans have celiac disease. An additional 18 million people are believed to have gluten sensitivity. But according to a piece in the New York Times this past week, they're not the people who are driving the gluten-free market. Hitesh Hajanavanis, an executive of Popcorn, Indiana, told the New York Times there's a growing population of people who've somehow heard that gluten-free is healthier or think of it as fashionable, and when they remove gluten from their diet, they're inadvertently taking out a lot of processed foods and are really feeling the benefits of eating healthier foods. Bigger brands like General Mills are rushing to get into the gluten-free market. Sales of gluten-free products is projected to bring in more than $15 billion in 2016. The company changed the recipes for Chex cereals and several Betty Crocker products to be gluten-free, and then began marketing that way as well. Ultimately, people in the food industry are confident this isn't just a fad and believe that gluten-free eating is a trend that, quote, has legs, as the general public becomes more concerned about processed foods. Well, you know what? Let's read the third article out this week, which knocks some of those stats and some of those feelings, some of those projections, some of those wishes and hopes and desires from some of those companies into a bit of a cocked hat. Let me bring you this report, a special gluten edition from Culinary Tides, which is headlined, "Not only have we already hit the ceiling, but the gluten-free bubble is already bursting." That kind of puts things into perspective, or that kind of brings you up a bit short, doesn't it? And it goes on to say, while market researchers predict continued healthy growth for the US gluten-free market, not everyone is convinced that it's built on a solid foundation. Susie Badaracco, president of the trend watcher Culinary Tides, says people with a medical need to eliminate gluten represent only a tiny fraction of the population. We know that. The juicy numbers in reports on the gluten-free market by Packaged Facts and Mintel, two big market research companies, therefore, are based on the assumption that the broader customer base, comprising people who buy gluten-free products out of choice rather than necessity, will continue to do so. She says, not only have we already hit the ceiling, the gluten-free bubble is already bursting, consumers are abandoning the diet. And some people in the food industry are already recognizing that they might need an exit strategy. So we seem to have different groups of people here buying gluten-free food, don't we? The signed-up members of the Celiac Disease Club, certainly me, probably you as well, other people who are gluten intolerant, yeah, and of course that other group of people who are deciding to go gluten-free out of choice because of some perceived health benefit. And I guess it's those people who are driving that 28% that we looked at a little bit earlier on, a couple of minutes ago. Okay, let's read a bit more. She says the message is clear. For people who do not have celiac disease, less than 1%, non-celiac gluten sensitivity, they reckon about 6%, but of course it's very difficult to find a number for that because those people aren't necessarily going through the books of health professionals, as it were. Or a wheat allergy, they reckon about 0.5%. Eliminating gluten will not improve your health or athletic performance or help you lose weight. Well, you know, I don't know how you feel about that, because I've spoken to lots of health professionals. I've spoken to athletes, as you know, on the program. I've spoken to some nutritionists. I've spoken to other people generally in society who say they go gluten-free because they reckon it makes them feel better. And as far as I can work out, the jury is still out on whether or not going gluten-free can improve your health or athletic performance or help you lose weight. And I think the weighting, if you excuse the phrase, on all of those issues, health, athletic performance, weight loss, are various, are different. I don't know whether you're getting that same kind of feedback, as I say, from experts, from nutritionists, from health people, and the general mood about people you speak with who have gone gluten-free. The gluten-free diet is a medical diet. Following it, if you don't need to, won't make you a healthier person. You know what? Perhaps it's some kind of perceived placebo effect. I don't know. It's taken a while, this report says, But these voices are getting more airtime in the mainstream media, noting that in the best and worst health trends of 2013, this sounds interesting, doesn't it? The best and worst health trends of 2013, a report from health.com covered by all the major news networks when it was released in December 2013, going gluten-free for no reason was right up there in the worst category. And a Dr. Oz episode, TV in the States, also from December last year, also singled out the gluten-free diet as a flawed approach to weight loss. And as the public becomes more educated and more precise data comes out on the numbers of people that have non-celiac gluten sensitivity, attitudes will change, and people who may currently be buying gluten-free on a false premise may lose interest, she predicted, she being, of course, Susie Badaracco, president of the trend watcher group Culinary Tides. And she's predicting, for example, some 20% mistakenly choose gluten-free because they think products are low in carbs. For example, 35% of consumers surveyed by the Hartman Group in 2012 said they bought gluten-free foods because they were healthier. That figure was 46% a couple of years earlier in 2010, so it seems to be going down. And Susie adds, consumers who thought gluten-free was a gimmick doubled from 11% in 2010 to 24% in 2012, and 20% said gluten-free was a fad. So it's all kind of interesting stuff, isn't it? Really, some of those statistics, little bit contradictory, little bit garbled. What can we deduce from all of that? Sales are going up. One person with a bit of inside knowledge reckons that the bubble may be bursting or about to burst as people realise that actually it's not a healthy diet necessarily. You've got to be on it for healthy reasons, but it doesn't automatically make you healthier if you don't have to be on it, if you are not a signed-up member of the Celiac Disease Club. What are your thoughts on that? You may be listening to this, and I hope I haven't offended you. I'm not going to drive away listeners because you are gluten-free out of choice. Maybe some of those stats kind of offends you. Maybe you're listening to those thinking, you know what, actually, I thought it did do something for me when I started, but actually now it doesn't. Maybe when you hear Shirley Plant speaking in the next few minutes, you'll think to yourself, what's that? More sugar? More fat? Maybe this is not the diet for me. We'll leave that with you. Food, as they say, for thought. Part 2 of our interview this week with Shirley Plant. Part 1 was last week, of course, and she has multiple allergies. So that was really kind of the making of her, because she discovered all sorts of things about herself and her own health and about cooking as well. So she's allergic to wheat and gluten and sugar and corn and eggs and dairy and a couple of other things as well, all kind of chucked in there. She's kind of a bit of a walking miracle, to be quite honest with you. As I say, first part of our interview with Shirley was last week, and you know what? She's kind of been through the mill to a certain extent. I mean, trying to work out what was wrong with her, and then finding allergy after allergy on top of allergy on newly laid allergy. And I spoke with her recently on the line from Ottawa, and she told me about the availability of food over there in Canada. Also a little bit about her book, Finally Food I Can Eat. But also we kind of start off by hearing about her fears for the future with regard to the diagnosis of diabetes in the Western world.
You know, it's really good. We have a good celiac association here in Canada. They're very present, whether on the web, with magazines. Very helpful if you contact them. They put out little booklets that, you know, are helpful guides when you're shopping. You know, I think it's called a little shopping guide, so that you know, because gluten can be hidden. It goes by very different names. It doesn't just go as gluten. It can be called, starch, flavorings, what the foods that contain gluten. So they're very helpful. They're usually at, allergy association events, but certainly anyone in Canada can contact them and receive lots of help and information. Certainly the awareness of celiac in the last couple of years has skyrocketed in Canada. I don't know if that's a good thing. It is a good thing, but certainly it means that it's more of a problem. I think the estimate sort of in North America is 1 in 130 are celiac. So certainly it is rising. I happened to meet a doctor a few months ago, a gastro doctor, and he said, he was relatively young, and he said, my forebears, he said, really would diagnose people with IBS. And he said, when I first started my career, I sort of was the same. But he said, literally now it's twice a week I am diagnosing someone with celiac disease. Is it that the wheat has changed? How the book, The Wheat Belly, is very prevalent here in North America. I don't know if it is over there, by Dr. William Davis. And he talks about we've changed the wheat that we've grown so much that the body cannot digest it. It just cannot accept it. And this is what we have caused such an issue. So, we're very lucky in Canada and the States with the Celiac Association. They're just great.
And what about the availability of food? Is that in general grocery stores, or are you having to go to the whole food markets and the health stores and the farmers markets, things like that?
I think it depends on where you are in Canada, but certainly if you're in the larger cities, the health food stores certainly have lots. Now the grocery stores, certainly in the natural health aisle, I've noticed even in the last year, there's so much more. But, and I say but, not all prepared, packaged gluten-free food is good for you. Just because it says gluten-free doesn't mean that it's good for you. I find so many of them, really the first and second ingredient are sugar, or starch, and that just turns to sugar in your body. So I do worry that we're creating, maybe something that's not that great, that we're going to end up with a generation of diabetics because everybody's just going to buy this gluten-free packaged food because it's quick and it's easy and it tastes good because it's got so much sugar in it. We have fast food restaurants here. One of them is a Tim Hortons, and I actually did a YouTube video last week because they have come out with a gluten-free macaroon. So I thought, well, this is very interesting, and it's packaged individually, and Tim Hortons is a place where you can go buy coffee and donuts and muffins, and, they're very fatty, and, they're really not good for you, but it's so popular. So I did this little video and I read the ingredients that were in it and I thought, oh my goodness, really it's just sugar. And I kind of laughed as to why they called it gluten-free, because a macaroon is usually eggs. It usually never has any flour in it, so I don't know why you would call it gluten-free. But that's what I'm noticing is everything has gluten-free on it. A box of peaches, gluten-free. I'm thinking, well, it never had gluten in it to begin with. Why are you calling it gluten-free? It's like it's a fad. It's like, oh, it's gluten-free, I'm going to buy it. So that's my worry there. I don't know if you have that over in the UK or not, but
absolutely. Well, not so much with the labelling, but certainly there is that growing feeling that actually, with some of the cakes and the biscuits, frankly, you might as well just put gluten-free on a bag of sugar or gluten-free on a packet of butter and sell that as a dessert or a cake or a biscuit or a cookie or something like that. Because, yeah, as you say, the amount of saturated fat and sugar in these things does make you think more than twice, doesn't it?
Right, it really does.
Yeah.
You can make a healthy gluten-free snack.
It's moderation. They're treat items, aren't they, very often?
Read what you're eating. Don't you want to know what you're putting in this beautiful body? Maybe some people don't want to know. I don't know. I do.
but certainly, Shirley, since I became celiac, I have taken much more of an interest in the food I'm eating and inevitably the food I'm cooking, rather than shoving in a ready meal. To be fair to me, I didn't do that much anyway. But when you are doing more of your own cooking and you are checking the label to see whether it's got that cross-grain symbol on, you do automatically glance over to that little nutritional chart. Then you think, Oh, look at that percentage. That's not very good. That's a very high number.
I look at a word or an ingredient and I can't pronounce it, and I think, do I really want to eat that?
Shirley Plant has written the book called Finally, Food I Can Eat, a dietary guide and cookbook featuring tasty non-vegetarian and vegetarian recipes for people with food allergies and food intolerances. Shirley, I've been reading some of the reviews. This one here says, this was the first cookbook I got when I had to go gluten-free and dairy-free for a while. I was feeling pretty overwhelmed and depressed about having to learn to cook differently. This cookbook has brought me such a sense of relief. Recipes that are uncomplicated, turn out well every time. Also a great resource book with information on allergies and intolerances, natural chemicals in foods, food substitutions and food combining. It sounds really good. And also you've got a website that goes along with it, haven't you? What's on there?
It's called Delicious Alternatives, and people can go there. I have recipes. I write a blog every week about either health or about food or helpful hints or what has helped me. You can sign up for my newsletter there, and again, I send out recipes. I send out healthy information for people. I also have a Facebook page. The Facebook page is called Finally, Food I Can Eat. And again, I'm always posting recipes and helpful hints for everybody, really, you know, whether you've got allergies or not, or maybe you know someone that has allergies, and but maybe that, you know, a lot of the recipes everybody makes. I have friends that don't, you know, I say to them, you're so lucky, they don't have any allergies, and they just love the recipes, and I just think that's fantastic. So you know, I'm always happy to share with people and help people, because I know what it's like when you first find out. And you know, I'm actually putting together a webinar, and it's going to be for people to help them to go. I think I'm going to call it, you know, the 21-day challenge, going gluten-free, dairy-free, sugar-free. I'm going to help people embrace the change and let them know it's about what you can eat, not what you can't eat.
Shirley Plant, ladies and gentlemen, an absolute pleasure and privilege to speak with Shirley. She is the author of Finally, Food I Can Eat. That's the book, and also her website, deliciousalternatives.com, or you can find her on Facebook as well, Finally, Food I Can Eat, and have a little look around. And there's lots of information on her website, and it's really interesting to have a little look through that. So as I say, it was great to speak with her. We've also got a couple of other nutritionists and dietitians and experts in the field lined up for the next few weeks. Who have we been speaking to recently? Well, let's not give too much away, but we've been abroad. We've spoken to a UK expert as well. We've got several other people waiting in the wings. We've got several people who've approached us saying, you know what, I've got something to say. I've got some advice to pass on for free. I've got some interesting stuff to talk about. So we'll be talking to them in the next few weeks. And also amongst them, we've also got someone who's going to give you a bit of a free sample from their forthcoming book as well. So listen out for details on how you can save a bit of money as well and get some free exclusive information. Also coming up over the next few weeks, incidentally, we're going to be starting a new series on bread, different companies that make different kinds of breads with different kinds of ingredients. We're going to be speaking to them, and also we're going to be popping our nose around a cookery course that does gluten-free bread making and skills and techniques, and passes that on to you. So hear more about that over the next few weeks on G3 Radio. The smell, the perfume, the fragrance of curry is wafting through the studio air conditioning ducts. That doesn't sound quite as romantic and sensuous, does it? And in fact, to tell you the honest truth, I'm just remembering the fragrances from Panjaban Curry and Ria and Kiri, who I spoke with a few weeks ago. And they are the people behind Panjaban Curry. You can follow them at Panjaban Curry, PANJABANCURRY. Ria and Kirin from that company. We'll be hearing from them in the not too distant future on this week's episode of the G3 Radio Show. But referring to this article by Alice Bast from allergicliving.com. And I was really intrigued to read it because very often we concentrate on the child in a family who has got celiac disease. And it brought me up quite sharply to consider, what about the other children in a family who have to go along with not eating at the same place or having to eat slightly different meals because they are, inverted commas, normal. They have a regular diet. How does celiac disease affect their life? And this is what Alice has been talking about in this article, which I'm just going to quickly run through. And she says your child needs support, not just the one who's got celiac disease, but the other child, the one who doesn't have to worry about gluten. We place so much attention on the child with CD, we often forget the impact it has on other children in the family. And she quotes Dr. Ritu Verma, who's a paediatric gastroenterologist and a member of the NFCA's Scientific and Medical Advisory Council. And she says that when her children were diagnosed with celiac disease, the family got rid of all gluten-containing foods in the house. And for the 2 kids with celiac disease, the change obviously was necessary. But for the one daughter who didn't have the disease, it was a sacrifice she was pretty much forced into. It's not just the changes at home. Families alter their dining habits, their travel plans, their holidays, so they can meet the dietary needs of just maybe one individual. And that special attention can be pretty uncomfortable for those who've got a gluten-related disorder. But someone who doesn't have that condition, especially if they're a child, may actually crave the spotlight. They may experience a sense of neglect, and if those feelings aren't communicated, either from them or reasons explained to them, it can lead to jealousy, perhaps resentment in the long run. And Dr. Verma says the brothers and sisters don't always speak up, I think because they feel guilty that the child with celiac disease is already suffering and they don't want to make it worse. So it can often go on for years until they reach an explosion point. So, how do you tackle those challenges? How do you make the other children in the family feel valued?
1.
Say thanks. It's such a simple word, says Alex Bast in this article, but it shows that you acknowledge and appreciate the changes siblings have made to help your family stay healthy.
2.
Consider setting up a gluten-containing section. Much like restaurants allocate storage and prep spaces for gluten-free food, you can do the same in your kitchen by designating a separate cabinet or specific toaster or a special area of the fridge for gluten-containing favourite foods. In many cases, the child will wind up eating the same gluten-free food as their brother or sister, but having the option is key, it's being suggested in this article. It's the knowledge that it's there if you want to.
3.
Involve siblings in the same activities as your gluten-free child. So, if you're trying out a new gluten-free pizza crust, then ask all of the kids to help pick out the toppings and decorate it.
4.
Encourage your relatives and friends to give attention to all the children on visits. So, you can bring other sweets, biscuits, cookies, cakes, candy, which are gluten-free so everyone can eat them, but also perhaps something special for the other child to have as well, because that's what they like, that's their favourite food.
5.
Set realistic expectations. The gluten-free lifestyle can be tough on anyone, so it's reasonable for siblings to express some frustrations. They won't always get it, but they'll likely agree to do what's best for the child with celiac disease.
6.
And check in on those siblings as well. Communication is the most important step, and Dr. Verma in this article in allergicliving.com says when she diagnoses a child with celiac disease, she always asks the parents to bring the other children along to their first meeting. It starts things off on the right foot. It gives the other siblings a chance to hear the doctor making those suggestions and recommendations. So it's not just the parents saying, because I said so, or it's because the doctor says so. They've been involved in that conversation. off to the great Indian subcontinent now as we continue our series looking at different G-free foods whose heritage is from different cultures around the world from that we are used to here in the United Kingdom. Asia and Italy on our list for forthcoming weeks, but this week, let's converse about curry.
Hi, my name's Ria and I'm from the Punjabi curry bases.
Hi, my name's Kiran and I'm also from the Punjabi curry bases.
There's some really great stuff going on here. So gluten-free, dairy-free, sugar-free, no additives, nut-free, coconut-free. So obviously I'm interested in the gluten-free. I know a lot of people are very, very concerned about the nut-free as well.
Yeah.
What's your range?
So we do a selection of mild, medium and hot. So we've stayed away from like your tikkas and your kormas you get nowadays in restaurants. So it's mainly to do with like your mild, we do a Bombay potato base, you've got an authentic curry base, you've got a Naga chili for the braver curry fans. We also do a keema that you can't really find in like Tesco's and supermarkets nowadays. So it's more of a homemade curry rather than like a restaurant curry or a supermarket jar.
And you know what? Looking in this jar here, now what have I got here? What's the
Naga chili there.
Right, okay. And looking through the glass into the jar, it's got lots of flecks of what are they? Different the seeds and the different.
What it is, it's more of a base to the curry rather than a sauce. So it's not a paste and it's not a sauce. It's more of a base. So in supermarket jars they'll put water in, whereas ours is the base is onion or tomato. So that's why you can see it's quite thick. Whereas when you go to supermarket jars, it tends to be quite creamy. But this has got a nice texture to it. And also when you say clean as well, when you empty that jar out and you need to add a third jar of water, when you wash the jar out, you'll see that the jar becomes clear, and that proves that we don't have any preservatives or additives or nuts or sugar or any rubbish in there at all.
Excellent. Okay, tell me about the company, because I've not heard of you before. Okay, that's probably my problem, not yours.
We're actually based in Northamptonshire. This is a family-run business. They're my mum's homemade recipes, and it all started out when my brother was at university. My mum actually used to send this to him in lunchboxes, and he used to actually sell it on campus for £1.
Oh, what an entrepreneur!
Yeah. Oh, I don't know about that, but no, yeah, he's and it just started growing from there. We then started making small batches in our kitchen at home, as you sort of do, and then we started growing, and now we're in a little warehouse. But it's all still handmade. We from the onions, to chopping the onions, to peeling the onions, everything is handmade to stop it from being mass produced. Yeah?
That's a lot of work though, isn't it?
It is a lot of work, but we don't want to compromise on the quality. We can easily say we'll get a lot of machinery in and it'll be faster and it'll be quicker, but to make mum's product still the same as it was when my brother went to uni, we need to keep the consistency.
And is that a family recipe that's been handed down, or have you developed it over recent years? How does that work?
No, it's my mum's recipe. My mum's mum and my dad's mum, they used ghee. It's a type of oil butter, but my mum stayed away from ghee even from when me and my brother were younger, and she uses pomace olive oil. So no, it's my mum's homemade recipe. It's not been passed down. It's Charanjit Sapal's recipe.
It's a lovely smell. So to describe what you've got going on here as well, because you've got these various kind of hot pots bubbling away.
What we do, we actually put the jars in the slow cookers, so the customer can get a real taste of what the product tastes like. We don't add meat or anything in there, but you've got your mild ones. Customers can try medium to hot. But yeah, like you say, the aroma is incredible. It's really
the aroma. Yeah. I was trying to avoid saying smell. I said perfume, but aroma. Yeah. That's the word, isn't it? The aroma. And cases behind you. So obviously you're expecting a huge amount of sales, which is fantastic. Yeah. And you're actually bottling all of these yourself, each one by hand, doing the screw tops and the labels.
Yeah, everything is done by hand. Like I said, from the onions to the jarring, to the labels, to the as we screw the jar, everything is done by hand.
How difficult is that with all the kind of bureaucracy and red tape and having your kitchens kind of checked over and health and safety and local councils and certificates?
Yeah, I mean it's hard work, but we've actually just had our local council come in a couple of weeks ago, and we got a 5 out of 5 star rating for health and environmental, and she said she couldn't really fault us on anything because we know how important it is, for the end consumer to make sure something is proper, if you like, it's genuine, it's clean. But no, I mean, it's a family business. Me and my brother run it day to day, and my mum just keeps bringing up new ideas and, keeps it plodding along, if you like.
Okay, and your assistant, or was he assistant, sister, friend,
my
colleague,
cousin?
Kiran,
yeah.
She disappeared because she's doing a lot of selling, which is really good.
Do the work.
So how do you develop this brand? Do you move into another kind of geographical market, or to another taste, or to another product?
Well, every week we do shows. So, like, for example, we're here in Liverpool, and then next week we'll do like the Ideal Home Show, the BBC Good Food Show. So we're always on the move. We're always trying to get people aware of what we do. We're in about 160 farm shops and delis in the UK. A lot of people ask us all the time, are you going to supply supermarkets? Hopefully one day, but we're just trying to walk before we can run, to be honest.
Fantastic. So how can people find you? What's your web address? How do people buy your products?
Our web address is www.punjaban.co.uk, and then on there you can find all the stockists we supply to. But online stockists in Liverpool. There's a local shop called the Yew Tree Farm Shop, and that's in Halewood, and they supply our curry jars from there, which sells really well. So
I wish you every success.
Thank you very much. Thanks for your time. Thanks.
And our thanks to Ria and Kirin there. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, you can follow them at Panjaban Curry on Twitter. That's PANJABANCURRY. And what better to go with curry than, of course, a little bit of rice. Now, we continue our series on various grains, alternative grains and flours. We've been talking about rice for a couple of weeks because there are so many different varieties of it. So we've talked about the various long grain rices and also medium grain rices. So obviously doesn't take a genius, no pun intended, to think that with this week we may look at short grain rice. Just a couple of three that we want to bring to your attention this week. First of all, the overview: short grain rice, wide, almost round body. Heck, it's short. When it's cooked, it tends to be moist and viscous due to a high level of waxy starch. It's a special kind of waxy starch. It's amylopectin. Because the grains stick together, short grain rice is a really practical choice for eating with, not with curry, no, chopsticks, eating with chopsticks. So glutinous rice, in other words. It absorbs less water and therefore less likely to lose its shape during cooking. Livingwithout.com also says that short grain rice is best in sushi, as you might imagine, if you're eating it with chopsticks and desserts and puddings. I haven't had rice pudding in a long time. Rice balls, croquettes and risotto. Let's look at Bhutanese red rice in a few moments' time. First of all, sticky rice, quite sweet, quite gluey, but numerous types come under the heading of sticky rice. There's red, there's purple. I think I've got some black rice in the cupboard as well. I must get that out. Brown whole grain sticky rice tends to be less clumpy. Used in Asian desserts. It's not surprising it's often called sweet rice. In Thailand, sticky rice is cooked with coconut milk, garnished with mango, for a fantastic dessert, apparently. And that does sound quite nice, doesn't it? Nice rice there. Coconut milk and mango. Sushi rice, a bit more chewy, like Japanese japonica, which we spoke about japonica rice, didn't we, last week on the programme. Once cooked, the sticky mass can be shaped into ovals, adorned with the raw fish, wrapped with seaweed, with other ingredients as well. I'm sure familiar with sushi. That's the kind of rice that they use in that. If you've tried to do sushi at home and you're using the wrong kind of rice, that's the reason it's not working. And Bhutanese red, as you can imagine, it comes from the Himalayan kingdom of Bhutan. And obviously, it's red. Well, at least a reddish hue, soft texture, earthy flavour. It's semi-milled. Part of the bran is removed. It's quite exotic. It's high altitude rice, and it cooks up fairly quickly. That's why it's grown up there. It's cooked up there in those mountainous regions, and that sounds really interesting as well. Bhutanese rice, and it certainly has made me, looking at these various rices over the past couple of 3 weeks, it's really convinced me that there's a whole world of rice out there. And I think I may have mentioned this a couple of 3 weeks ago. It'd be really interesting to see some more rices, the different flavours, the different textures, the different sizes, the different tastes, the different mouthfeels of these different rices in the supermarkets on the grocery store shelves. And I'm just wondering whether there's a market for someone to be importing and distributing, branding these different rices under one particular brand. Yes, we've got your Uncle Ben's. How many do they have? 2 or 3 varieties? Maybe I'm doing them a disservice, but I'm wondering whether there could be a kind of world of rice range with the different rices, with the different ingredients, the different recipes, I should say, on the back. There's an idea. It's probably been thought of before. I'm probably a bit slow to the party on that one, in which case I apologise. Perhaps you can let me know. On Twitter, we're at G3 Radio. Nearly concludes this week's show, but let me tell you what we've got lined up. As I mentioned in a few minutes ago, we're going to be talking about bread for the next few weeks. We've got various companies which produce bread, so we're going to be speaking to them about the different flavours, the different textures, the different ingredients, the different distributions, the different models that they are using to sell their breads. That's hopefully going to be of interest to you. That's over the next several weeks. Also, we're going to be, and some of those, incidentally, are really small companies, some startups, some individuals, some husband and wife teams who are going into the bread making business as well. So hopefully you're going to be sticking around for that over the next few weeks. Next week, we're going to go to Italy. It had to be, didn't we? We're going to be looking at a bakery out of Venice, to all intents and purposes. And also, this coming week, if you're in the UK, there's a company called Almondy. Now, this is one of those really intriguing companies that make desserts which are on general release. They're on the general dessert section in the supermarket. They're not in the gluten-free section. They're next to the roulades and the other kind of cheesecakes and things like that. And they just happen to be gluten-free. They are from, essentially, Sweden. They use almond biscuit, almond flour as their base in their kind of chocolate cheesecake range. They are topped with things like Toblerone and Dame bars. And they have got a brand new flavour coming to a supermarket near you soon in the United Kingdom. It's a bit of a treat. I've been asked to go along to their press launch this week. I don't know what the flavour is. I can't even hint at it. I just don't know. Okay, but I'm going to be having a taste test and hopefully a few other free samples to bring back as well. And I'll be doing a couple of interviews and we'll be speaking about Almondy and their new range of gluten-free desserts next week in the programme. And the programme is called The G3 Radio Show. I'm Peter Stewart. Have a good week.
And that was the G3 Radio Show with Peter Stewart. And you. Thanks for listening. And remember, until next time, be good, be healthy, and be G-free.